The first time the human saw her, he thought it was a dream. She emerged from the swirling vortex of light that tore through the night sky, her figure silhouetted against an otherworldly glow. Her skin shimmered faintly, as though kissed by starlight, and her hair cascaded down her back in waves of liquid silver. She moved with an elegance that seemed almost unnatural, every step deliberate yet effortless. He stood frozen on the edge of the forest clearing where she had landed, his breath caught somewhere between awe and disbelief. She turned to face him, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made his chest tighten. They were unlike any eyes he'd ever seen, deep pools of violet flecked with gold, radiating both curiosity and authority. Her gaze pierced straight through him, as if she could read every secret buried within his soul. For a moment, all he could do was stare, his mind struggling to reconcile what he was witnessing. Was this real? Could something so impossibly beautiful exist outside the confines of myth or fantasy? Her voice broke the silence, soft but commanding, carrying a melody that seemed to resonate deep within his bones. "Do not fear me," she said, tilting her head slightly, studying him as one might study a rare artifact. "I mean you no harm." The words were simple enough, yet they carried weight, each syllable laced with an unspoken promise. Her lips curved into a serene smile, revealing teeth that gleamed like polished pearls. It wasn't just her appearance that captivated him, it was the way she carried herself, exuding confidence without arrogance, power without menace. As she stepped closer, he noticed details that escaped his initial shock. The delicate patterns etched into her skin, glowing faintly like constellations mapped across her flesh, the subtle iridescence of her attire, which seemed to shift and shimmer as though woven from moonlight itself. Every aspect of her being spoke of origins far beyond his comprehension, yet there was something strangely familiar about her presence. Perhaps it was the way her gaze softened when their eyes met again, or the warmth that lingered beneath her regal demeanor. Whatever it was, it drew him in, compelling him to stay rooted despite the primal urge to flee. He didn't know then how profoundly this encounter would change his life. All he knew was that standing before him was someone, or something, extraordinary, and for reasons he couldn't yet fathom, she had chosen him. The alien princess extended her hand toward him, palm upward, fingers slightly curled as though inviting him to take it. He hesitated, his own calloused hand trembling at his side. "Come," she urged, her voice mellifluous yet firm, wrapping around him like a gentle current pulling him forward. Something in her tone compelled him to obey, and before he fully understood what he was doing, his rough hand slid into hers. Her touch was cool, smoother than silk, sending an electric shiver racing up his arm and settling somewhere deep in his chest. She led him away from the clearing, her movements fluid and unhurried, as though time itself bent to accommodate her pace. The forest around them seemed to come alive under her presence. The rustling leaves whispered secrets, the air grew thick with an intoxicating sweetness, and even the shadows appeared less menacing. He stumbled once, his boots catching on exposed roots, but she steadied him effortlessly, her grip surprisingly strong for such a lithe frame. They walked until they reached a secluded grove bathed in silver light streaming through breaks in the canopy above. There, she released his hand and turned to face him, her expression unreadable yet strangely tender. "You must listen carefully," she began, her voice dropping to a near whisper, as if afraid of being overheard by forces unseen. "What I am about to tell you will challenge everything you believe. But trust me, human, when I say this is necessary, not just for you, but for both our worlds." Her words hung heavy in the stillness, each one pressing against his consciousness like stones dropped into water. Necessary? What could possibly be necessary about encountering an alien being in the middle of nowhere? Yet, impossible as it seemed, he found himself nodding, drawn deeper into the gravity of her presence. She leaned closer, her luminous eyes boring into his with an intensity that left no room for doubt. "My people, we are dying. Our lineage weakens with each passing generation, our strength waning. We have searched countless galaxies for salvation, seeking those whose essence might restore what has been lost. And now—" She paused, her gaze flickering briefly down to his hands before returning to meet his eyes. "Now, I believe I have found it in you." His heart pounded wildly in his chest, each beat echoing louder than thunder. The implications of her statement crashed over him like waves, threatening to pull him under. Why him? Of all the billions of humans scattered across Earth, Why had she singled him out? Before he could form the question aloud, she continued, her voice unwavering. Your kind possesses qualities unique among sentient beings: resilience, adaptability, raw vitality. Combined with my bloodline, your offspring would inherit unimaginable power. Power capable of reviving my people and bridging the chasm between our races. He opened his mouth to protest, to demand answers his rational mind screamed for, but no sound came out. Instead, he found himself staring at her, transfixed by the earnestness in her expression. This wasn't some manipulative ploy or desperate gamble. It was conviction etched into every line of her ethereal face. Still, the enormity of what she proposed weighed heavily upon him. To father children who would belong neither wholly to his world nor hers? To play a part in shaping destinies spanning galaxies? It felt too vast, too surreal to comprehend. And yet, as she took another step closer, closing the distance between them until mere inches separated their bodies, he felt something stir within him, a spark of curiosity mingled with something darker, more primal. Her proximity was intoxicating, her scent filling his senses with notes of ozone and blooming flowers. For a fleeting moment, logic dissolved, replaced by an instinctual pull he couldn't deny. If she wanted him to trust her, perhaps it wasn't merely her words that sought to persuade him, it was her very essence, reaching out across species and space to claim him. In the days that followed, the humans struggled to reconcile the alien princess's extraordinary proposition with the mundane reality of his existence. Each morning, he awoke to the same small cabin surrounded by towering pines, yet the memory of her shimmering presence lingered like a phantom haunting his every thought. He tried to focus on his daily routines, chopping wood, tending to his garden, repairing the old tractor, but her words echoed incessantly in his mind. Offspring. Power. Salvation. These concepts, so foreign and immense, collided with the simplicity of his life, leaving him disoriented and restless. Doubt gnawed at him relentlessly. Was this truly happening, or had some cosmic anomaly warped his perception? He scoured the internet late into the nights, searching for anything that might explain her claims: reports of extraterrestrial encounters, scientific theories about genetic compatibility across species, even obscure folklore about celestial beings descending to Earth. But nothing satisfied the ache of uncertainty gnawing at his core. His rational side screamed that none of it made sense, while another part of him, quieter but insistent, whispered that perhaps not everything in the universe adhered to human logic. Then there were the dreams. Vivid, unsettling visions visited him nightly, each more vivid than the last. In them, he stood amidst landscapes unlike any on Earth. Fields of crystalline grass under twin suns, oceans of liquid light stretching endlessly toward horizons blurred by shifting colors. She was always there, watching him with those piercing violet eyes, beckoning him closer. Sometimes she spoke, her voice resonating through the dreamscape like a hymn. Other times, she simply observed, her expression unreadable. When he woke, sweat-soaked and gasping, the line between dream and reality blurred further, leaving him questioning which realm held more truth. His emotions oscillated wildly, swinging between skepticism and fascination. Part of him yearned to dismiss the entire encounter as a hallucination brought on by exhaustion or stress. After all, hadn't he spent years living alone in the wilderness, isolated from society? It wouldn't be surprising if his mind conjured such elaborate fantasies. Yet another part of him clung stubbornly to the belief that she was real, that she had chosen him for reasons beyond his understanding. How else could he explain the way his body reacted whenever he thought of her? The heat pooling low in his abdomen, the involuntary tightening of his muscles, the strange ache in his chest that felt both painful and exhilarating, all sensations he couldn't ignore. He began to notice changes within himself, subtle shifts that defied explanation. His senses sharpened, sounds once muffled became distinct, sense once faint grew overpowering. Even his physical strength seemed amplified, allowing him to complete tasks that once left him weary with newfound ease. At first, he attributed these alterations to coincidence or improved health, but deep down, he suspected otherwise. Could her touch have awakened something dormant within him? Had her presence somehow altered him on a fundamental level? Despite his growing unease, he couldn't bring himself to turn away from her entirely. Every evening, he returned to the clearing where they had first met, half expecting her to appear again. Some nights, he sat there for hours, staring at the stars, hoping for a sign, a flash of light, a ripple in the air, anything to confirm she hadn't vanished forever. Other nights, he paced restlessly, torn between anger at her intrusion into his life and longing for her return. She haunted him, not just in his thoughts but in the very fabric of his being, embedding herself so deeply that escaping her influence felt impossible. The internal conflict consumed him, tearing at the fragile balance he had built over years of solitude. Trust her or reject her? Accept the unknown or retreat into familiarity? The questions swirled endlessly, unanswered, leaving him suspended in a liminal state between disbelief and desire. And though he fought against it, a part of him already knew, whatever path he chose, nothing would ever be the same again. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of amber and indigo, she returned. This time, there was no dramatic entrance, no vortex of light slicing through the heavens. She simply appeared, stepping out from behind a cluster of ancient oaks as though she had always been there. Her presence filled the clearing instantly, commanding attention without effort. He froze mid-step, his heart leaping into his throat. For days, he had wrestled with doubts and fears, oscillating between dismissing her as a figment of his imagination and yearning for her return. Now, faced with her undeniable reality, all coherent thought fled his mind. "You've been waiting for me," she said softly, her voice carrying the faintest trace of amusement. It wasn't a question but a statement, delivered with the confidence of someone who already knew the answer. He opened his mouth to respond, to deny or confirm her assertion, but no words came. Instead, he nodded mutely, his pulse hammering in his ears. She smiled then, a slow curve of her lips that sent a jolt of electricity coursing through him. "Good," she murmured, taking a step closer. "Because I've been thinking about you." Her admission startled him, though he wasn't sure why. Perhaps it was the casual intimacy of her tone, or the way her gaze lingered on his face, studying him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. She tilted her head slightly, her silvery hair catching the fading light. "I can see the conflict in you, human. You're torn between what you know and what you feel, between what is safe and what is inevitable." The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to speak. "Why me?" The question burst forth before he could stop it, raw and unguarded. "Of all people, why did you choose me?" Her expression softened, though her eyes remained sharp, glinting with something akin to admiration. "Because you are different," she replied simply. "Not because of your strength or your intellect, though those qualities are admirable, but because of your spirit. You carry within you a resilience that transcends your physical form. A fire that refuses to be extinguished, even when faced with uncertainty." She paused, stepping closer still until mere inches separated them. "And because—" her voice dipped lower, almost hesitant, though her gaze never wavered. "Because when I touched you, I felt it. A connection. Something ancient and profound, binding us together in ways neither of us fully understands." Her words sent a shiver racing down his spine, igniting a storm of conflicting emotions. Pride warred with vulnerability, hope clashed with fear. He wanted to believe her, to trust that this connection she spoke of was real, but the enormity of her claim terrified him. To be chosen not just by another person but by an entity from another world, for a purpose so vast it defied comprehension. It was too much. Too overwhelming. But then she reached out, her hand brushing lightly against his cheek. Her touch was cool yet searing, sending waves of sensation rippling through him. His breath hitched, and for a moment, he forgot how to breathe. "Do you feel it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of his heart. "This pull between us? It's not just biology or destiny, it's something deeper. Something sacred." He wanted to argue, to insist that feelings couldn't override logic, but the truth was undeniable. Beneath her fingertips, his skin burned with awareness, every nerve ending alight with a hunger he couldn't suppress. Her proximity was intoxicating, her scent enveloping him like a spell. Slowly, inexorably, his resolve began to crumble. Whether it was her words or her touch, or some inexplicable force drawing them together. He found himself leaning into her, closing the remaining distance until their bodies nearly brushed. "I don't understand," he admitted hoarsely, his voice cracking under the weight of his emotions. "I don't know if I can do what you're asking. But," he hesitated, searching for the right words, only to find none adequate. "But I can't walk away either." Her smile widened, triumphant yet tender. "That's all I ask for now." Then, without warning, she pressed her lips to his in a kiss that shattered whatever defenses he had left. It wasn't gentle or tentative but fierce and possessive, claiming him in a way that left no room for doubt. Her taste was otherworldly, a blend of sweetness and spice that ignited a fire deep within him. His arms wrapped around her instinctively, pulling her closer, surrendering to the tidal wave of sensation threatening to consume him. When she finally pulled back, her eyes gleamed with satisfaction, though her expression remained serious. "Remember this moment," she said, her voice steady despite the rapid rise and fall of her chest. "Because it marks the beginning of something greater than either of us can imagine." With that, she stepped away, leaving him breathless and reeling, the taste of her still lingering on his lips. As the days stretched into weeks, their bond deepened in ways neither of them could have anticipated. She began appearing more frequently, no longer content to remain confined to the forest clearing where they had first met. Together, they explored the wilderness surrounding his cabin, her curiosity about Earth's flora and fauna seemingly endless. She marveled at the simplest things, the way sunlight filtered through leaves, the songs of birds at dawn, the texture of moss beneath her fingertips. Watching her discover these wonders filled him with a quiet joy, as though sharing his world with her allowed him to see it anew through her eyes. Yet, their interactions weren't limited to idle exploration. During their conversations, she revealed fragments of her own world, painting vivid pictures of civilizations that spanned galaxies and technologies that defied human comprehension. She spoke of cities floating amidst rings of stars, of libraries containing the collective knowledge of countless species, and of rituals that celebrated the interconnectedness of all life. Though her descriptions were poetic and evocative, there was a bittersweet undertone to her words, a longing for a home she feared might fade into oblivion unless drastic measures were taken. Each revelation added layers to her character, transforming her from an enigmatic visitor into a complex being whose burdens weighed heavily on her slender shoulders. Their relationship evolved beyond verbal exchanges, becoming increasingly tactile as well. Innocent touches, her hand brushing against his arm, her fingers trailing along his jawline, soon gave way to moments of heated passion that left them both breathless. These encounters were unpredictable, sparked by the slightest provocation. A shared glance, a whispered word, the accidental brush of their bodies. When they came together, it was with an urgency that bordered on desperation, as though each touch served as a reminder of how fleeting their connection might be. Her skin, cool to the touch, contrasted sharply with the fiery intensity of her kisses, creating a paradoxical blend of sensations that left him craving more even as he struggled to process what was happening between them. Amidst this whirlwind of emotion, he found himself grappling with guilt. Guilt for allowing himself to become so entangled with her, knowing full well the implications of their union. She had spoken plainly about the purpose of their bond, to create powerful offspring capable of revitalizing her people, but the reality of such a responsibility loomed large in his mind. What kind of future awaited children born of two vastly different worlds? Would they belong anywhere, or would they forever exist in a liminal space, caught between identities? The thought gnawed at him, planting seeds of doubt that threatened to undermine the trust blossoming between them. Still, he couldn't deny the magnetic pull drawing them closer with each passing day. Their chemistry was undeniable, a force that transcended barriers of language, culture, and biology. It wasn't just physical attraction, though that played a significant role. It was something deeper, something primal yet profoundly intimate. As they lay together beneath the stars one night, her head resting on his chest, he realized that their connection went beyond mere compatibility. It was symbiotic. Where she lacked understanding of human emotion, he provided grounding. Where he faltered under the weight of uncertainty, she offered reassurance. Together, they formed a tapestry woven from threads of vulnerability and strength, dependence and independence. Yet, even as their bond strengthened, shadows lingered on the periphery. Questions remained unanswered, fears unaddressed. What did the future hold for them? Could their love withstand the pressures of destiny and duty? And most importantly, could he truly give her what she needed, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually? These uncertainties hovered like storm clouds, casting occasional gloom over their otherwise radiant connection. But for now, they chose to focus on the present, savoring each moment as it unfolded, trusting that time would reveal the answers they sought. During one of their explorations near the dense thicket where wildflowers bloomed in vibrant bursts of color, she suddenly stopped, her body tensing as though sensing an unseen threat. He turned to her, concern etched across his features, but before he could ask what troubled her, the air shimmered unnaturally, distorting the landscape around them. From the distorted void emerged figures cloaked in garments that seemed woven from darkness itself, their forms shifting and indistinct. The leader stepped forward, his presence commanding yet eerily silent, his gaze fixed solely on the alien princess. "Princess Lyria," the figure intoned, his voice layered with an authority that chilled the human to his core. "Your absence has not gone unnoticed. The council grows impatient. They demand your return." Lyria's expression hardened, her usual serenity replaced by a steely resolve. "I have not abandoned my duties," she replied, her voice steady despite the palpable tension. "I am fulfilling a mission critical to our survival." Her hand subtly moved to rest on the human's arm, a gesture both protective and defiant. The counselor's eyes flickered to the human, disdain evident in his cold stare. "This alliance is unauthorized. It jeopardizes everything we have worked to preserve. You risk contamination of our pure lineage with this primitive being." Anger flared in Lyria's eyes, her voice rising with controlled fury. "Contamination? You dare use such terms when it is your rigid adherence to tradition that has weakened us. Humanity holds strengths we desperately need. Strengths that could ensure our survival." The counselor's form shifted menacingly closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Survival at what cost, princess? By diluting our essence, we lose ourselves. You tread dangerous ground, aligning with this creature. Return now, or face the consequences." The human felt a surge of protectiveness rise within him, his earlier doubts momentarily forgotten. Stepping forward, he addressed the imposing figure, his voice firm despite the fear coiling in his gut. "If she goes, I go with her. Whatever challenges lie ahead, we face them together." A ripple of surprise passed through the counselor's form, quickly masked by renewed hostility. "Foolish mortal. Do you truly believe you can stand against forces beyond your comprehension?" He gestured, and the surrounding figures advanced, their movements synchronized and menacing. Lyria raised her hand, a shimmering barrier forming between them and the encroaching council members. "Enough!" she commanded, her voice resonating with power. "I will not be coerced. If the council wishes to discuss my actions, they may do so directly. Until then, leave us in peace." For a tense moment, the standoff persisted, the air thick with unspoken threats and simmering power. Then, with a final glare, the counselor signaled a retreat, his form dissolving back into the shimmering void from which they came. As the distortion faded, leaving only the tranquil forest behind, Lyria sagged slightly, her strength visibly drained. Turning to the human, her eyes filled with gratitude and determination. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice tinged with emotion. "But this is only the beginning. They will not relent easily. We must prepare for greater challenges ahead." The days that followed were a blur of preparation and quiet resolve. Lyria and the human worked tirelessly, drawing upon their combined strengths to fortify their bond and ready themselves for the inevitable confrontation with the council. She taught him about her people's history, their rituals, and the intricate web of politics that governed their society. In return, he shared stories of human resilience, tales of overcoming adversity through unity and love. Together, they forged a partnership built not just on passion but on mutual respect and understanding. Their connection deepened further as they trained under the stars, practicing techniques she had learned from her warriors. He discovered an untapped reservoir of strength within himself, guided by her steady hand and unwavering belief in his potential. At first, he stumbled, his movements clumsy, his instincts slow, but with each session, he grew more confident, more attuned to the rhythm of her teachings. When their sparring sessions ended, they would sit together beneath the canopy of stars, their breathing synchronized, their hearts beating as one. Yet, it wasn't all discipline and focus. There were moments of levity, laughter bubbling up between them like spring water breaking through rock. She delighted in his attempts to mimic her native tongue, her melodic laughter ringing out when he mispronounced a particularly tricky phrase. In turn, he introduced her to Earth's music, playing old vinyl records on a battered record player in his cabin. She swayed to the melodies, her silvery hair catching the dim light as she moved, entranced by the raw emotion carried in every note. These small joys became anchors, grounding them amidst the storm brewing on the horizon. When the council finally returned, it was with a force that dwarfed their previous encounter. The sky darkened unnaturally, the air crackling with energy as a fleet of shimmering ships descended into the forest clearing. Warriors clad in armor that glowed faintly with bioluminescent patterns emerged, their weapons humming with latent power. At their center stood the counselor who had confronted them before, flanked by elders whose very presence seemed to warp the fabric of reality around them. Lyria stepped forward, her posture regal and unyielding. Beside her, the human stood tall, his earlier fears replaced by a steely determination. "You have no authority here," she declared, her voice cutting through the oppressive silence like a blade. "This is my choice, my destiny. I will not be swayed by threats or intimidation." One of the elders, a towering figure wreathed in shadow, spoke, their voice resonating with ancient weight. "Your defiance endangers us all, child. This union you seek is forbidden, a corruption of our sacred lineage. Surrender now, or face annihilation." The human felt a surge of protectiveness rise within him, his hand instinctively reaching for hers. "If you want her," he said, his voice steady despite the overwhelming odds, "you'll have to go through me." The counselor sneered, raising a hand to signal the warriors to advance. But before they could act, Lyria raised her own hand, a radiant barrier forming around them. It pulsed with light, its surface rippling like liquid gold. "Enough!" she commanded, her voice amplified by an unseen force. "I am your princess, bound by blood and duty to lead our people. Yet I am also a being of free will. You cannot dictate my path." The elder's expression darkened, their forms shifting menacingly closer. "Then we shall see if your faith in this mortal is justified." What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. As the warriors launched their assault, Lyria and the human moved in perfect harmony, their actions choreographed by the unbreakable bond they had cultivated. Her powers surged, creating shields and bursts of energy that deflected the incoming attacks, while his newfound strength allowed him to counter physical threats with precision and ferocity. Together, they formed an impenetrable duo, each movement complementing the others in a dance of resistance. But it wasn't brute force alone that turned the tide, it was their unity. As the battle raged, Lyria reached out to the human mentally, their minds merging in a way that transcended language. Through this link, he understood her strategies instantly, anticipating her needs without hesitation. In return, she drew upon his emotions, channeling his courage and determination to amplify her own abilities. Their combined strength created something greater than either could achieve alone, a beacon of hope that shone brightly against the encroaching darkness. Witnessing this display, the counselor hesitated, their confidence wavering. The elders exchanged uneasy glances, their rigid convictions shaken by the undeniable power radiating from the pair. Finally, the eldest among them raised a hand, signaling a retreat. The warriors withdrew, their forms dissolving back into the ships, which ascended into the sky and vanished without a trace. As the tension lifted, Lyria turned to the human, tears glistening in her violet eyes. "We did it," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief and joy. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as though afraid she might disappear. "Not just yet," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "There's still so much ahead of us." In the weeks that followed, news of their victory spread throughout Lyria's people. Initially met with skepticism, their story began to inspire others, sparking debates about tradition versus progress. Slowly but surely, attitudes shifted, and the council found itself forced to reconsider its stance. Though challenges remained, the couple faced them side by side, their love serving as a testament to the possibilities born from embracing change. Together, they embarked on a new chapter, blending their worlds in ways neither had imagined. Children came eventually, their laughter filling both the starlit skies of Lyria's homeworld and the quiet forests of Earth. Each child carried within them the best of both parents, a fusion of resilience, adaptability, and boundless potential. And so, their love became legend, a symbol of unity across galaxies. They proved that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, trust, courage, and devotion could forge a future brighter than any star. Hand in hand, Lyria and the human walked into that future, their hearts forever intertwined, knowing they had changed not just their lives but the destiny of two worlds.